you go ahead. Gala? It's in here. Oh, the gala's here? Yeah, I believe it's in here. The gala in this space? Is it? Oh, no, it is over there.
It's over there, so we can take the drum over there, eh? You know where that other one?
All right, I'm hoping everybody's made it back to their seats or in this general area here. I'm just going to take a minute to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Lisa McBride, the Vice President and Country Leader of Small Modular Reactor Solutions at GE Hitachi. With a wealth of experience in the energy sector, Lisa is at the forefront of advancing innovative nuclear technologies that promise to transform our energy landscape. In her role, Lisa leads the strategic direction and implementation of SMRs and the solutions driving forward GE Hitachi's commitment to sustainable and efficient energy solutions. Her leadership and vision are instrumental in navigating the complexities of modern energy challenges while fostering innovation and collaboration. Today, Lisa will be sharing insights into GE Hitachi's latest advancements and initiatives in the nuclear sector. So please join me in welcoming Lisa for a short but sweet and very enlightening company spotlight that promises to be both enlightening and inspiring.
All right. So it is certainly, it is a pleasure to be here today on Treaty 6 territory, and certainly a pleasure to have the opportunity to experience the culture that Sheldon and the Center of Excellence has brought to this conference. And so if you could all join me in a warm applause for our entertainers. That was just great. I would have preferred if they went after me, but here we are. So when I was getting ready to come today and I was looking at the conference website, I was looking at the land acknowledgement that goes on the conference website, and I saw that it talked about the fact that we acknowledge all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries in the past and the imprints that we'll make together going forward. And when I reflect on that, I'm really honored not only to be invited to participate today in the discussions, but also to do so in a way that is hopefully consistent with the traditional purpose of these lands. That also got me thinking about how each and every one of us has a role to play in contributing to our future. Today we find ourselves looking forward to the imprints that we'll make together as we think about the energy transition. I believe the one thing that we can all agree on is that climate change is a real threat to our future and to Mother Earth, and that makes today's discussions so very critical. As Chief Shelley Bear said this morning, when it comes to Mother Earth, we need to share her and everything she has to offer. And Elder Canistino said that as we approach Mother Earth, we should do so with harmony and balance with future generations in mind. Those are pretty powerful messages to set the tone for today's discussions. Not to mention the fact that the theme for this year, Tradition to Transition, Empowering Our Energy Future, is both timely and deeply resonant. I think it captures exactly what's at stake right now in Canada's energy sector, a shift from conventional energy systems to ones that are more all-encompassing, more innovative, and more sustainable. But just as importantly, it acknowledges that this transition must be grounded in tradition, particularly in the knowledge, the values, the culture, and the leadership of our Indigenous people. I'm really grateful to be here today and to have the opportunity to listen and to learn and to talk about how we might work together to support Saskatchewan's clean energy transition while exploring new opportunities for collaboration with Indigenous people and community. But more importantly, to understand the perspectives of our Indigenous communities, partners, and nations. For me, the work I do in the nuclear sector is deeply personal. My grandfather was part of the construction crew that built the Darlington Nuclear Generating Station in Ontario, and I grew up hearing stories about what that experience meant to him, about the pride he felt in contributing to something bigger, and the pride he had working on a team. He always had a sense of purpose, and the work he was doing at the time was unique and new, and it was going to help power communities and build something that lasts. And that stayed with me. And it's something I carry with me into conversations. It shaped how I think about nuclear energy. It was part of the conversation at our dinner table. I carry this with me into every conversation about what nuclear energy can do for Canada and the people who live here today. Saskatchewan is a province with a strong energy foundation. From uranium mining to power generation, Saskatchewan has built a depth of expertise in energy and resource development. And that's one of the reasons that we were proud to begin working with Saskatchewan-based organizations even before SaskPower selected the BWRX 300 technology as a potential for deployment. We've signed a number of agreements with a number of organizations in the earliest of days to support early engagement with the local supply chain here. In the last year or so, though, I've had the opportunity to build strong relationships with the Saskatchewan First Nations Natural Resource Centre of Excellence and the Board of Directors. I've had the opportunity to meet with them on a number of occasions. And I want to take a minute to share my gratitude for those conversations and the meetings that we've had. I've learned so much, and I know I have a lot more to learn, but I'm really grateful for the time that they've given me to share their thoughts and their insights with me. I'm grateful for their candor, their input, and the guidance and willingness they give to share their honest perspectives. It's how I see building a partnership. These partnerships are helping us identify and build relationships here in Saskatchewan with Saskatchewan-based suppliers and associations, including Indigenous-owned and operated businesses, who could play a critical role in the future of SMR deployment. And it's through this work that we're focused on capacity building, making sure that local businesses have the information, the support, and the lead time they need to participate meaningfully in the project as it evolves. But as I see it, the real opportunity here revolves around people. And as Saskatchewan evaluates the potential of SMRs, there's an important chance to deepen Indigenous participation, not just through jobs and business partnerships, but by creating space for communities to help shape where, when, and how these projects take form. It's about more than inclusion, it's about empowerment. Ensuring Indigenous values, priorities, and leadership are part of the conversation from the outset. And while that possibly will look different for every community, we believe that strong partnerships start with respect, transparency, and a willingness to build something together. We know that partnerships must reflect the unique goals and circumstances of each community. And our role is not to prescribe how engagement should unfold, but to listen carefully and work collaboratively with our partners and communities where interest exists. We're early in this journey, and there's still a great deal of work ahead to understand what partnerships in Saskatchewan might look like. But we are committed to continuing the conversation with open minds, listening ears, and a deep respect for the perspectives, the values, the culture, and interests that you bring to the table. And at the same time, we know that meaningful engagement must go hand in hand with transparency about the technology itself. Communities, not just utilities and suppliers, but communities deserve to understand exactly what we're talking about and how those tools may fit into a broader vision for clean, reliable energy. We're proud to be part of the energy transition, not just because of what it means for energy development, but because of what it means for Canadian innovation. And we know that there are some hard questions around that. How do we marry Western science with Indigenous beliefs and culture? It doesn't always line up. Deployment involves careful planning, community engagement, regulatory oversight, and partnerships at every level. And it involves being upfront about what we know and what we're still learning, and that goes for everyone. But every project still needs to earn its place with community. That's why conversations like the ones we're having today matter so much. It's not just about project teams sharing information. It's more about listening, really listening to what communities want, what matters to them, and where and how we can all work together. Because at the end of the day, We're not shaping this new energy system on our own. We're shaping it together. And it will only succeed if it reflects the voices, the values, and the priorities of the people it's meant to serve. We know the importance of education and capacity building and supporting new technologies like SMRs. And we know that the success of any major project hinges not just on technology, but on the people. From engineers to safety specialists to skilled trades workers, the human capacity required is significant. That's why we're encouraged to see academic institutions, including those here in Saskatchewan, stepping up to prepare students for careers in clean energy. One example I'm especially proud of is the scholarships that we recently provided to the students at Saskatchewan Indian Institute of Technology. To me, these students represent the next generation of energy leaders, and my hope is that support like this helps open more doors for exploration and opportunities in the nuclear and in the broader clean energy sector. I believe that there are opportunities to work with Indigenous communities to help ensure pathways into our sector are open, accessible, and inclusive. But, and this is a really big but, we also know, all of us know, that there are significant socioeconomic barriers that need to be addressed and solved. Barriers that most of us in this room cannot possibly fathom. There are significant hurdles that need to be overcome in order to really make this opportunity a reality. And that will take all of us working together to figure out a way forward. It's not just as simple as training, education, and jobs. There's much more to it. And I'm calling on my industry colleagues to urgently join that conversation. That conversation is important too, and we need to figure out together what's possible. What can we do together to solve the hurdles ahead of us? All of this will take sustained effort, but we're committed to being part of that effort. And we know we're not alone. We're seeing partnerships forming across government, industry, academia, and community right now. And the partnerships we're seeing are unlike anything we've seen before, but there's much more to do. If we continue to build on this momentum with humility and integrity and ambition, there's no limit to what we can accomplish together. Together, here in this room, we have the energy to change the world. Saskatchewan's energy transition is already underway, and SMRs have the potential to play a meaningful role in that shift. As Sheldon said this morning, there's a lot of work to do, and collaboration is key. I know that trust is built over time, not through words alone. It's built through consistent actions, shared goals, and mutual respect. And that's the spirit I hope to bring to our work in Saskatchewan. So to the elders, the chiefs, the leaders, the knowledge keepers who are here today, thank you for sharing your time and your perspectives. The conversations that happen here can help shape the future of energy in this province and around the world. Think of the imprints that we will make together going forward. I'm truly grateful for the chance to be with you today. Thank you for inviting me to be part of the program. Thank you. Miigwech. Hello. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Get a picture here.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lisa. It's really wonderful listening to someone who so passionately delivers such a powerful message on collaboration and working together to achieve clean energy for Saskatchewan. So thank you for that. And let's give her a round of applause. All right, it's our final session of the day. We started out this morning with a pipe ceremony and thanking our Creator. We're giving some acknowledgement to our land. We gave a Mother Earth moment. We had a space there to acknowledge our Creator. We brought in our women and we made some offerings of prayer to the land and acknowledgement there. Then we had And then we brought out into breakout sessions where we had leaders in industry come in and speak. And now we're bringing it back full circle to another panel of our leadership, of our chiefs. So our final session of the day, we are honored to present a panel discussion on leadership perspectives on First Nation participation in major projects. This session is particularly significant as it addresses the vital role of First Nations communities and how they play in shaping and participating in major projects across various sectors. Our discussions will delve into the opportunities and challenges faced by First Nations in engaging with these projects, highlighting the importance of collaboration, respect for traditional knowledge, and the pursuit of mutual benefits. To guide us through this important conversation, we're welcome back to the stage Sheldon Watney, President and CEO of Saskatchewan First Nations Natural Resource Centre of Excellence, as our moderator. Joining Sheldon are Chief Willie Sellers of the Williams Lake First Nation in British Columbia. Oh, and I forgot my other notes over there. So I'm going to say Chief Evan Te Potat, Kaktuishtahau. Chief Darcy Bear of the Whitecap Dakota First Nation. And Chief Marcel Head of Shoal Lake Cree Nation. So join me in welcoming these leaders.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Cheyenne. Let's give the whole roster of speakers a big round of applause through the day. Haven't they done such a great job? And I'm very pleased and honored to be back up here along with my friends and colleagues and my bosses. It's really a pleasure to be able to try and help to provide some insight as well from a leadership perspective. Our chiefs, as we know, they have great responsibility, and not only to their band membership, but as we work together as First Nations right across our treaty or traditional territories. There's a lot of discussion that goes into projects and aspirations and goals and objectives and those types of things, because we always have to be conscious of what decisions we make may affect or impact decisions of other nations as well. So the relationships between the chiefs are very important. And so I'll maybe start off with just a question, and I'll ask a question to each of the chiefs up here today. And so Chief Darcy, maybe if you can share a few comments and reflections on some of the things that you've been able to hear here today from some of the speakers.
Omitakapi, a petuk devastero, chitavashte, Waston, the Pechuzapi, or Kamani Hamakapido. Thank you, Sheldon. First of all, welcome my fellow chiefs up there, the Chief Sellers, the Chief Tepatat, and Chief Head. And of course, good afternoon to each and every one of you. No, I think it's what Sheldon and the Center of Excellence have been doing for the past number of years has been great, and to see this conference and the amount of people that are here today and the interest that everyone is taking. And I think as far as all of the breakout sessions, everything else, I haven't been able to attend every one of them. I actually had a meeting at 1 o'clock here on another project, so that's a positive thing. It's also a place to gather, to network, and to do some business. But certainly, I know there's a lot of discussion in regards to not like renewable energy, but also getting to net zero. But talk about, we're saying to 2050 is what I was the former chair of Sask Power, and we've certainly talked about inclusiveness of First Nations in our province to participate in the projects, and looking at small modular reactors, having a partnership with OPG in Ontario, and looking at their building the first one in the world, and of course Sask Power being able to be right there alongside and look at what I guess the experience they're having over there and how they can take that knowledge and bring it here. And you just heard from McBride. Lisa. I'm sorry, Lisa, I forgot your first name for a second, but Lisa McBride. And so just to show that there is definitely opportunities out there. You're also seeing a lot of our First Nations in regards to wind energy projects, solar projects in Saskatchewan here, and they're taking equity ownership in those partnerships. So it's not just a JV. And a lot of times what we've seen in the past is companies that come in and they want to do enter into a business deal with our First Nation. They just want a simple joint venture. When the project is finished, complete, they walk away, and there's no sustainable revenue generation back to the nation, no employment for the members. And so those things have really changed in the last number of years. We're seeing more and more capacity at the First Nation level as more of our people are educated and have that capacity right at home. And also looking at the fact of holding not just government's accountable, but industry accountable as well. That you have to do, if you're going to do business in our territories, you need to do business with us as well. And we need to take our rightful place and be a part of the economy. You look at the TRC calls to action and TRC number 92, the inherent right to an economy. And so these are some of the things that, when we're talking with industry, we're talking about, and that these partnerships have to be real, and they can't just be just a one-off, and we have to have equity ownership. And I think that's where we're all going as far as in the future, and making sure we have those opportunities. If you look at how the federal government, when they created the Indian Act, and it's kind of like, if you look at the signing of Treaty 6 was in 1876, and the 150th anniversary is coming up next year. But the Indian Act is also 1876, and that 150th anniversary is coming up next year as well. But you imagine though, when the treaties were signed before that, when all these scholars from the federal government sitting in a room and looking at how they can control First Nations, and instead of creating a Treaty Implementation Act, they created an Indian Act. And that Indian Act was meant to segregate us from society and keep us out of sight and out of mind, and allowing all of the settlers to purchase all of the real estate that's available, invest in infrastructure, create economic development and opportunities, and not allow First Nations to participate. So that's why I say today, I think you're seeing more industry players, not just here in Canada, but globally, who do want to work with First Nations in a real way where we're actually taking equity ownership. And you're hearing the federal government talk right now about having First Nations inclusion in major projects. And so those are the things that we want to see as well. And how can our First Nations participate, take our rightful place, and be a part of the economy? If you look at all of our corporations nationally, the 634 First Nations, all of our development corporations are in their first generation. They're anywhere from 30 to 35 years old. But if you look at the non-Indigenous corporations, you have the Hudson's Bay Company, just tanked, is 355 years old. Even Molson Breweries is over 200 years old. But for First Nations, we're in our first generation. So we're here to take our rightful place and continue to go forward. So I'm glad to see the great attendance here, and thank you, my good friend Sheldon, for inviting us.
Right on. Thank you, Chief Darcy. Maybe I'll ask the same question to Chief Evan Tapatat from Kakawishtahow to maybe share some reflections and in your opinion, what are some of the important things industry and governments need to take into account when working with First Nations?
Thanks, Sheldon. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Evan Tapatat. I'm Chief of Kakawishtahow First Nation, Southeast Saskatchewan Treaty 4. I just want to acknowledge everyone that's here today, pipes that were lifted this morning. When I think about where I was 20 years ago, schlepping through my undergrad to where we are today, seeing the people in the room, seeing the powerful companies, the leadership of how we've evolved, these discussions have to happen. And forecasting where we're going to be 20 years from now. I very much tell people that Indigenous economics is coming. And the industry has to make the decision, either get on board or get the hell off the way. And that's the plainest way I can say it, because as First Nations settle claims, more and more of us have capital to play with. We have investment money to play with. And thinking about where I was 20 years ago, where we are now, we talked a little bit about, Chief Bear talked a little bit about we're getting educated in the Western way. When I was a young guy, it was get your grade 12, and then it became get your undergrad. And now we have, the norm in First Nations country is get your masters. And all at the same time, we have people getting these PhDs. So it is happening right now. And to the powerful companies that are out there, I would say, like I said, reach out, make meaningful partnerships. FNUV University of Regina, Dr. Ottman's in the crowd. I think she's in the front here. Her job right now, if I was a company, I'd be meeting with her and saying, we want some of those people that you're educating right now, because we're pushing out a lot of undergrads right now. We're pushing out the master's grads right now. And that being said, I see Stephen Buffalo in the crowd. He's leading the oil and gas charge. You know, it's happening right now. So to the crowd, to the people that are here today, it's good space to be in. In 2025, it's all about creating space for everyone in different ways and creating space for Indigenous economics. It's happening right now. Chief Bear, Chief Sellers, they're just some of the few examples of people that are out there doing their things. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Chief Evan. And I think one of the things that you know, we like to share and we're proud of within Saskatchewan, at least our regional organization, is that we've gotten really good at building institutions and working together to help ensure that we're building capacity and working together to serve our First Nations. That's with the vision of our chiefs, with the vision of chiefs of the past and elders of the past. They wanted to set things up for the future. And Dr. Ottman and myself, we're fortunate to be able to lead a couple of the institutions, as there's many others. And it's nice for you to mention Stephen Buffalo, my good friend. He leads the Indian Resource Council of Canada, to see which plays a similar role to what we do, but for First Nations right across the country. So we're really thankful that you're here, Stephen. You know, I'd like to continue to move the conversation forward and maybe ask Chief Head to share a few words and comments as well, along the same lines as you've heard a lot of the good speakers today, and you know, you've been in leadership for a long time, and maybe some of the feelings that you're feeling as far as what we've heard today would be great to share.
Thank you, Sultan. Just like to say I'm really glad I agreed to come down to this conference, this forum, on behalf of my membership back home, Shoal Lake Nation. Just in terms of, you know, just coming out from a real tragic situation back home that we're dealing with, but I just want to ask, you know, everybody to keep the Young and the Laughlin family in your prayers. They just lost a 10-year-old last Friday, and so keep them in your prayer and your thoughts. But anyway, in terms of the you know, the discussion that we've heard so far, things that I've picked up, and I've same thing, you know, across, you know, like even participating in the global energy show in Calgary, and as well as the hydrogen show in Edmonton. I always hear words like partnership. I hear words like inclusion with First Nations participating in the economy. And some of the presenters here, like some of the comments that I've heard, you know, I've heard them at these conferences that I've attended. But more so, you know, in terms of, you know, participating in the economy, I think this forum really highlights, you know, how First Nations can get involved in whatever resource sector there is in the province of Saskatchewan. In our case, you know, like 3 years ago, I met with the Premier Scott Moe at a forum in Calgary, and I think all of us know, you know, his comment regarding a strong economy in Saskatchewan, and I think that's just part of the conference here. You know, to look at that, what that economy looks like in terms of from a First Nations perspective. We had a meeting, Minister, and I said, you know, like 3 years ago I met with your Premier, and I told him, you know, I asked him 2 questions. The economy that you're talking about so loudly and so, you know, proudly, every time you get to the media and you explain, you know, the strong economy in Saskatchewan. You know, in Calgary, they were hovering in a little circle, you know, and I purposely, you know, went and squeezed in between his minister and himself. And I asked if I can join the circle. And he said, yeah, come on. You know, well. And then I only have 2 questions. In terms of the strong economy that you talk about, do you have Indigenous people as part of your economic development plan in Saskatchewan? And he said, yes, we are including First Nations in that economy. My second question is, well, where do we see it? Where do we hear you in terms of that economy and including First Nations as part of that economy? See, I just been up in one of the breakout sessions here, and I talked about the inclusion. I think both levels of government, the federal and the provincial government, need to recognize that we as a people, Indigenous people, were the first people that were in this land, now called Canada. That recognition has to include our sovereign rights, our jurisdiction over the land and the resources. We may not have it on paper, we may not have it in terms of legislation or policy, but it's rooted after oral history that have been taught by our elders. And that oral history stick with us right in our hearts. That sovereignty, we never gave up sovereignty. We never gave up jurisdiction over the lands and the resources. And when our people were instructed to sign treaty, they were instructed specifically not to give up the land, not to give up the resources. Because the vision that our people have had before treaty was a vision of inclusion. They knew, and Chief Bear alluded to, and see, they saw a people coming to our shores who were developers, were creators, inventors. They saw that. And they saw, a way to share the land, to share the resources. And in terms of, coexisting as a nation. And I think more so, in terms of participating in the economy today, both industry, both levels of government have to recognize our sovereignty and our right to the land and the resources. And I think, that forums like this speaks out, that process. There's a lot of questions that you probably had as sitting there as a participant in this forum of what that economy looks like. What is there that governments and industry can do for First Nations? Well, I'm telling you right now, recognize the sovereignty that we have with our land, not within the boundaries of a reserve, because we never asked for reserve settings. We never asked for the Indian Act. We never asked, for a government to control the lives of people, Indigenous people, in a reserve setting. Shoal Lake Cree Nation, along with Red Earth Cree Nation, share a land, what we call Sipanagug, traditional territory. It encompasses probably about 1,300 square miles of territory that is rich in minerals, rich in critical minerals and resources. Right now, we have a pilot, an engagement with industry, and that's something that we're proud of. And it's an example, of what industry and First Nations can do together. Not in terms of who's going to benefit more other than the other, because what we're looking at is an equal share of the resources and equal benefit of that, whatever profits that come out of that resource. So, but I'll stop right there. I tend to be long-winded, and I love hogging the mic at their FSI and assembly, so I won't do that.
We never noticed, Chief. John, just kidding. I served a long time with Chief Head too, and I was Chief, so and he's still Chief, so it's he did a lot of good work for people. And you know, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank one of my good friends, Chief Willie Sellers, and the great work that he's been doing in Williams Lake, British Columbia. And sometimes it's good for us as well here in Saskatchewan to hear a bit of a different context as it relates to leadership, to economic development, and those opportunities in other sovereign jurisdictions, we'll say, you know, from a First Nations perspective. So, Chief Willie, maybe share some thoughts on, you know, what you're hearing today and how you're feeling about the conference. And I'm really happy you're here to spend some time with us.
No, thanks, Shell. Way huhuedap, Jechwa, Willie Sellers, Cookbeat, Tekekol, Esequemulu, Shuhinu, Latiswentwin. I wanted to thank the warm welcome that I've received over the last couple of days from the province. Saskatchewan, of course, you know, holds close to my heart. Played hockey here, played fastball here. It is really the center of Indian country. In my opinion, in my experiences. But you know, one thing is certain is that we have long-winded chiefs in BC too, eh? we are different, but we are the same. And you know, it's good to put that into perspective by traveling from BC over to here to just see how similar we are in regards to the way we live, the way we act, and the way that the politics are. And you know, I come from interior British Columbia, 3 hours north of Kamloops, 3 hours south of Prince George. I come from a small town. There's lots of politics there. It's an old redneck hillbilly town. We're a resource-based economy. It's mining, it's forestry, it's ranching, it's pipelines. And we deal with the same things over there. I mean, we have a different provincial government or a different municipality or we have a conservative riding. It doesn't matter because we're all dealing with the same thing when it comes to wanting more for our people, creating careers and finding that balance of being. There are mines in the territory that have historically always been there. They, you know, they rammed those down our throats and through the door and got those approvals without any First Nation inclusion. So there's a lot of catch-up that's happening there. There's been a lot of education that has had to happen. And we're not perfect. You know, there is still a lot of work to do, but we at least have a seat at the table now. We're moving along. We are seeing some of those benefits. We're seeing a lot of the opportunity. Those are positive things, and that's progress, and that's what former chiefs and councils have fought for. That's what leaders from every single one of our communities across Canada has fought for, is to make sure that we're seeing that progress. But really what it comes down to, and is very apparent through the discussions and opinions from everybody in the room today, is that industry has to really be a part of that progress. You know, the proponents working in our territories need to realize that they have to bring the Indigenous peoples to the table in order to have a successful project. And that's what the messaging is, and that's what we heard from our elders group too. There was a funny comment, I think it was by Ken Saddleback. He said, you know, I love listening to some of these speakers in Indian country. It's like listening to a good tune, a good song. And you know, maybe he'll be jigging to us later, Chief Bear, but right now I think I'll take that away back home and continue to hopefully say those good words that really does uplift our people, because being in these leadership roles, I mean, that is a big part of what we do. We need to be at that table and bang our fist on the table and continuing to be a part of that education of industry. That's what reconciliation is. That's what economic reconciliation is. And that's what industry needs to be a part of.
Awesome. Thank you very much for those comments. You know, Chief Darcy, I'll come back to you, and I know that, you know, we've been friends and colleagues for many years, and you've done a lot of great development on your First Nation over the years when we're looking at economic development opportunities, lowering the unemployment rate, those types of things, and maybe you know, share a bit of that and maybe some advice to those who are gathered here, because some of us as leaders that come into the role as a new chief, things like that, and I know I was there at one point in time, and you're trying to figure out what do we do, but then also that same message can be shared with those that are here from government and industry on, you know, how do we start to do things right, or what are some things to be mindful of as we're starting to interact and starting to build up our nation from an economic development perspective. Maybe some insights on that from your experience.
Yeah, no, thank you, Sheldon. First of all, I'm res right out. I was raised on the res since I was a baby by my grandparents, and so I've seen the tough times when we had no modern infrastructure. You know, we had to haul water, we had to cut wood to heat our homes. There were still outhouses, and yet we were only 15 minutes away from a city. And so seeing all those times, and then being elected as a leader of my nation, and finding out that our nation had no money. We had an overdraft, we had a stack of payables, lack of governance structure and policies. And, you know, like last fall in October, I just finished 30 years as the chief of my nation, but when I started, there was nothing there. And when you're in a leadership role and you accept the responsibility to be a leader, you have to accept all the challenges that come with it. But then you need to look at those challenges and turn them into opportunities. And how do you do that? Of course, you find solutions. And that's one of the things that we've always done, even around my table with my executive team, my council. Anybody can identify a problem, but what is the solution and how do we go forward? And definitely there's going to be a plan A, plan B, plan C, but we always chase plan A. But having a 70% unemployment rate, being right beside the city of Saskatoon, you know, like now that's all changed. Now we have a 6% unemployment rate. We have over 700 employees. We have 500 people commuting from Saskatoon on a daily basis. We have all of the modern infrastructure. We have better than bottled water quality going to every household in the nation, to every business. We are the first Nation in Saskatchewan to have fiber optic cable, high speed to every home in the nation, door-to-door recycling, door-to-door garbage pickup. We say we have the coolest elders in Saskatchewan because when they turn 65, we put air conditioning in their homes. We have a partnership with the Saskatoon Fire Department. We have a volunteer fire department in the community. We have police presence. We have community safety officers for public safety. Over 1 million tourists coming into our land. But a lot of our projects was all about partnership. And the very first one was the Dakota Dunes golf links. And being a small First Nation, and we didn't have the equity to do this project by ourselves, but I had a lot of respect for two chiefs in Saskatchewan. When I was a young leader back in those days, I was in my 20s. And Chief Harry Cook from the Lac Ronge Indian Band, they had Kitsaki Developments doing over $100 million of business activity. Chief Harry Lafon from the Muskeg Lake Nation, who they negotiated the first urban reserve in Canada here in Saskatoon. And so those were two respected leaders I looked up to. When we built that golf course, of course, we always, when we're doing business, we all know this as business people, we want to limit our risk, right? Mitigate our risk as we and do our due diligence, make sure that from a perspective of business, our number one reason we want to get into business is for profits. And then, of course, there's employment. But if we're profitable, we sustain the employment. And then we got to look at the location, where we're locating it, making sure that, is there any grant programs out there that we can access, and we're going to access them, and then looking at the equity contribution that's required, whether or not we need partners or not. So I remember when we first built the golf course, and we said in our pro forma income statements we'd pay off our debt in 12 years. We paid it off in 6. We've since bought out our partners. Golf Digest named us the best new golf course in Canada. And then from there, when the casino, as a Saskatoon Tribal Council, we're looking at putting it here in the city of Saskatoon, but they had a plebiscite. Whitecap was actually Plan B, and then we eventually became Plan A, and now the casino is out on our lands. We just recently built a hotel, and hotel sitting at a 78% occupancy. We just paid us a dividend. Yesterday we had a Dakota Dunes Hotel board meeting, and the fiscal year for that is January 1st to December 30th. So we just got a dividend yesterday back to the nation. So we're building businesses to create opportunities and be a part of the economy. But with that, you see all the tangible assets when you drive through the nation. You'll see the buildings, the businesses, but there's also the intangible assets of children waking up on a daily basis and seeing their mom and dad go to work on a daily basis. And there's no better role model than for our children to see that and see and the partnerships we have. You know, like even when we looked at building a highway. We talked about we're going to go to the province and we need to build a highway. We knew they would never build a highway to a casino. So what I said is we're going to work with the city of Saskatoon, the 4 rural municipalities, 2 towns and Whitecap, and we're going to approach the province. We're going to build a tourism corridor that goes from Saskatoon to Lake Diefenbaker. And we approached the city and the mayors and the Reeves. They all signed the MOU. We took that to the province. It was so difficult to say no. It was the first time in history when you got a largest urban center in Saskatchewan. You've got four RMs, 2 towns, and the First Nation collectively working together saying we're going to build a tourism corridor. So the first phase happened to be to Whitecap. And so it was a $10 million first phase. And the province said to us, Chief, we don't have the resources to do this. We can't give you the money till April 1st of next year. I said, well, we will bridge finance it then. Give us a letter, we'll bridge finance. They didn't think we'd get a letter. We got the following week, we had 3 financial institutions saying they would bridge finance that. All of a sudden, lo and behold, the province found the money. They didn't want to see a First Nation build a highway for them. So we got the first phase, and then after that, the next 5 phases, we managed 3 of those next 5 phases. And the first time in province's history, a First Nation managed a highway project for the province. And then all of our partners wanted to brand the tourism corridor Chief Whitecap Trail. It was the first time a highway is named after a chief in the Saskatchewan. But those are the things about being persistent and about reaching out and working in partnership with other leaders, regardless of their political stripes. I've worked with whether it be Chrétien, with Harper, with Trudeau, and now we're going to be apparently be eating carne here in a couple of nights. But so we have to work with every political stripe is there. I even remember before Brad Wall became the premier, and he was in opposition, meeting with Brad Wall and having discussions and becoming good friends eventually, and we still are to this day. But prior to that, we were working with Romano and Calvert, and then Brad Wall, and then Mo. But having those relationships and working with whoever, regardless of who the mayors are in the cities or the Reeves or the mayors of town, you got to work with them. And of course, working with colleagues, with our other First Nations, and creating those partnerships. Such as we've had many partnerships with other First Nations working together and sharing ideas right across this country and even into the United States. And we need more of that. We need to always uplift one another. If somebody has a great model, let's look at that model. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And you'll be so surprised when you reach out to another nation that they're willing to share, because those are part of our values as First Nations, that sharing and caring and looking out for one another. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Chief Bear. 30 years of leadership, eh? That's awesome. And just to your point about the cross-border trade, and those are things that we continuously explore, is how can we do trade as First Nations here in Saskatchewan with our Native American tribal relatives as well. And so those are some exciting things. We'll hear some of that tomorrow on one of our panels as well. But I'll pass that same question on to Chief Evan, just to share a little bit of advice and some of the work that you're doing, maybe some experience that you've learned during your tenure as chief for those that are gathered here today.
Yeah, it's just at a meeting yesterday in Edmonton, and the phrase that comes to mind all the time is health is directly related to wealth. And when our people, the First Nations people of Canada, are the poorest people in Canada, we're the unhealthiest people in Canada. And the people in this room have the power to fix that. The CEOs, the industry, the companies, the leadership in this room, we think about these partnerships and what they should look like. Keep that in mind, is how rich do you have to be? We know Chief Head talks about his natural resources that they're not being consulted on. You know, this is happening right now, and we are getting to this point now where we are managing wealth, not just poverty. And a lot of First Nations that I see sometimes are just barely keeping their head above water, trying to fight that battle, crystal meth, homelessness, housing, recreation. But we're getting to the point now where, with all these claims, the wealth is there. And, you know, I see some of the CEOs, some of the big companies trying to just throw trinkets and beads still, and it has to stop and it has to change. Because if it doesn't, you know, the $1 million, the $100 million deals that Chief Sellers has just invested, that's going to be $500 million in 25 years. And if you're going to stand there and lowball the First Nations, you're going to be on the outside looking in. I know that BC is a little bit ahead of us in terms of Indigenous relations with the government by 20 years. Alberta's probably 10 years ahead of Saskatchewan. But in Saskatchewan right now, we're trying to get Premier Mo to understand that none of us are going anywhere. You know, my daughter is going to live here. The council that I work with, Kakawista First Nation, Whitecap, we're going to live here. Doesn't matter what our race, skin, or color says. Doesn't matter if you cheer for the Oilers? Or the Flames, Stephen. So, but we are going to live here in Canada. We just as well make partnerships to get along, right? I always revert back to my good friend, Chief Cat, Mr. Lorme. He says, not a person in this room made residential schools. Not a person in this room made the white paper. But everybody in this room is part of the solution. And I want you to take that back to your companies, back to your First Nations, and just think about that. Gone are the days where we slam our fists as chiefs and councils. It shouldn't come to that. And if it does come to that and you're one of the companies we're dealing with, just know that they've exhausted all their options. A few years back, I did the same thing with the potash company. We thought we backed ourselves in the corner. We thought it was the last thing we could do. But in hindsight, we were probably a little bit wrong. But we need to settle all this in the boardroom. But if there's a First Nation out there banging their fists, just know that maybe it's time to kind of loosen up the grips that you have. And the last thing I'll talk about here, because I know we're getting short on time, is Chief Bear alluded to the partnerships. So we're developing 60 acres over by the airport right now. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. I've asked Chief Bear, what did you guys do? What are you guys doing? How did you do it? CIB, FNFA loans, things like that. We're watching Chief Sellers, we're watching all the First Nations out there saying, how did you guys do it? The partnerships are happening, the synergies are happening, and there's no reason why synergies shouldn't be happening with industry, Indigenous and non-Indigenous. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Chief Evan. Now let's give him a big round of applause. I think just in terms of your relationships with Chief Darcy, and I know years back we were developing urban lands with Red Pheasant when I was chief, and I did the similar thing. Got that advice, sought it from Chief Darcy, and how do you go about it? And I think embedded within that is a message for those that are here too, even with industry, because we've heard a lot today, and we've heard for many years. We're gonna help support training and employment programs, and then now it's moving to we're going to develop procurement and supply chain opportunities for First Nations. But now it's what we're starting to talk about is equity, and what does that mean? But it's going to take companies to take that first step, to build that partnership. But as you've heard from many of the leaders, it's about relationships. And to be innovative and do things different than what's been the norm for many generations. And you have willing partners here that are waiting to hear and that are willing to work with industry and government on those partnerships that are meaningful to their nations. And so, as we look to the future, maybe I'll ask that same or similar question to Chief Head. In terms of your experience, what type of advice can you give to those that are here to continue the good work with First Nations, and even take a bit of risk, but internally as companies, that needs to be talked about, and the willingness to do that. So, Chief.
Thank you. Yes, I was one of those chiefs that used to bang on the table and be out, but one thing I haven't really left is when I get emotional, I speak with a voice, that's very strong, and people have really complimented me for having that strong voice. I think that's what really is needed when you're speaking on behalf of your people that elected you as their leader. You need to have a strong voice when you're dealing with the government. We're dealing with industry. And it's a voice, it's not out of anger. It's not anger. It's just something that really instills and empowers us as First Nations leaders. But the part, I guess, that's really been a real motivator is to hear what the elders have said, in times past. And they've encouraged, to work, yes, with government, work with industry. Today, we've been regarded as trailblazers as to what you envision on behalf of your community. I go back to a phrase that says basically, without a vision, the people perish. So if you don't want your people to perish, or tagot-tagita, tagit-timagisitsik, magintoini taman taminupanigotsik, not to live in poverty, not to live in a state of always wanting, but to have a vision for them of what can be done on their behalf. One example has been, about 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, we had a huge fire within our traditional territory called the Bell Fire. And this is what illustrates of what a vision, is exactly what a vision is. When you look at a fire like the fires today, what is beyond that fire? What benefits can there be within a fire? And when you think about words like replenishment, words like replantation, that was in the minds of my council, our people. Yes, when we evacuated, it was devastating to leave our homes, displaced out of our homes. Today, about a year and a half ago, we approached the federal government, see if we can access funding to start a tree planting operation. And they looked at our proposal, and within a month and a half, they approved a grant to plant 3 billion trees in the course of 5 years, and 2.6 million worth of funding. And again, going back to partnership, we partnered with a current tree planting operator. And part of that plan is to have capacity training dollars to teach our people to tree plant. And although it is a seasonal thing, but it's a project that's really beneficial for the community. But part of that plan, not just tree planting. We're looking at our own operation to take over an operation, to have our own equipment and operators of equipment to do exactly what our partner does. And part of that vision, too, is to be able to position Shoal Lake Cree Nation and Red Earth Cree Nation, is to have our own nursery and to plant our own seedlings. So that is one illustration, Sheldon, folks that are here, of envisioning. The other part here is creating partnership with industry in the forestry sector. And there too, the government and the funders have asked. I was even told, by a gentleman sitting across the table in Ottawa. He told me specifically, when I mentioned we're going to be partnering with industry, and he smiled with a kind of a snickering smile. And he told me, Chief, he says, industry is not interested. You're not interested in partnering with First Nations. Right away, I would have banged on the table and I would have told him off. But amazingly, I held my peace. And then, but deep down inside my head, I said, I'm going to make you eat your words. And he says, yes, okay, we'll give you funding, but it'll be very minimal. And then, and this is another area in the forestry sector that we're partnering with industry. And he says, if you can, demonstrate to us, as a government, illustrate to us that you can do business with industry, then we'll be happy to fund you. A year gone by last year in the town of DePaul, Manitoba, the same guy that told me that industry will never be interested in partnering with First Nations. I told him, yeah, we did manage to attract a partner in the industry. And he says, well, you just told me, he says, I told you, in Ottawa. I know what I said, he says, that if you can prove to me that industry is interested in partnering with you, I'll not only do 1 year of programming funding, if you can demonstrate a partner, I'll do it 2 years and maybe even 4 years. And I said, a partner, and I'm not privy to tell you because we signed what is called an NDA agreement, a non-disclosure agreement with the industry. So I'm not ready to mention who that partner is. And he got excited and smiled, and he says, Chief, I know what I told you in Ottawa. I said that you will never attract industry. You'll never partner with industry. Will never partner with you. I remember those words. Now you're making me eat my words, he says. So, but in terms of that, at this forum, there's probably many examples of what First Nations can do. What we can demonstrate to Canada and even the rest of, even in our province, of what we can do in terms of partnering and in terms of, envisioning what that economy looks like and for the future of our people and the people of Saskatchewan. We have, the areas of critical minerals, renewable resources within our traditional territory. And that is exactly what we're dealing with right now. And again, talking about the non-disclosure agreements, we do have industry already at the table, prepared and willing to partner with Shoal Lake Nation and Red Earth. So that's what we have today. Thank you.
Awesome. I don't know, boys. He said NDA 3 or 4 times. I think he wants to tell us. No, just kidding, Chief. Yeah, I'll turn the final comments over to. Thank you very much, Chief Marcel. Yeah, let's give him a big round of applause. And Chief Willie, as you mentioned, I know the jurisdictions are a bit different. The relationships are the same but different. Maybe share some advice as well for those that are here, in terms of interacting and working, with First Nations for a brighter future.
Yeah, no, thank you for all the comments and the questions. I mean, the first story that I tell when I get home to BC will be about how I shared that buffalo robe with my good friend Chief Evan on the stage at the Natural Resource Forum. One of the things in the clear message that we always give, for the most part, I mean, for the communities that aren't white cap, I mean, no offense to what Chief Bear's doing. I mean, that is unbelievable things that he's doing and setting the tones along with those other communities that are in these urban centers. For the rural communities, when these projects come along, they're, for the most part, once in a generation. And, you know, I will never see this opportunity ever again in my generation. So there is a reason that we are so passionate about making sure that we have a seat at the table. Historically, we have never had a seat at the table. And that is why there is so much animosity and so much hate, and why we want to bang our hands on the table and fight, because we are fighting for what our ancestors couldn't, but taught us that we will be able to one day. To be patient, to be strong, to get educated, and we're able to do that through a number of different streams. So you fast forward to 2025, and these projects don't happen without First Nation inclusion. And sometimes that pisses off industry, sometimes that drives projects out of our territory, but it's a two-way street when it comes to having the conversation, because we want to have one, and industry has to too. I mean, I touched on the natural disaster that happened with Mount Poly back in 2014. And we've since done, because of the relationship that we've been able to build in light of this major disaster, tens of millions of dollars in reclamation and rehabilitation works when it comes to cleaning that mine site back up. We have impact benefit agreements with every major mine in our region, which we have 3 copper gold mines. That's Gibraltar, that's Osisko, so Taseko, and Mount Poly, which is Imperial Metals. We also have that relationship with Enbridge on a natural gas pipeline that's running through the territory. And when we're sitting at these tables and we're negotiating multi-million-dollar benefits and deals that are flowing back into our communities, it is generational change that we're going to see in which every single one of these chiefs are touching on. When it comes to employment opportunities, when it comes to better health and wellness and supports and programs, when it comes to pumping out better athletes and more educated individuals that are going to be able to fight this fight long after we're gone. I mean, that's the legacy stuff that we want to see as leaders. I mean, we want to be able to look back at our tenure, whether it's in the chief position or whether it's in council or whether it's as a parent, and be proud of what we've been able to do and what our kids are going to be doing when we're dead and gone, and great grandkids, et cetera, et cetera. You know, I do my part in community. I have 5 kids, so we're really looking forward to that future generation. And it's what I continue to have in the back of my head, is that, you know, I have to be better, and I have to make sure that I'm using the voice that I have and the platform that I have, that our previous chiefs and leaderships gave us, to make sure that it's going to be easier for our kids. And you know, no, that is the thing. That is the thing that industry has to understand. You know, we are trying to find this balance with you. We are trying to be supportive of these projects and this industry in our territories, but we are also keeping in mind that we have to make sure that we are being stewards of the land and we're protecting it for future generations. And the more that we say it, the more that you hear it, the more education that happens, hopefully the easier and more streamlined it'll be to get these projects moving forward as quickly as everybody wants them to, so that everybody is happy and everybody is safe, and we can be proud about it at the end of the day and brag about it on the buffalo robes at the front of the Saskatchewan Natural Resource and Energy Forum in Saskatoon.
Right on. How about a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? Just some closing comments for me, and you know, such great speakers and longtime leaders, and you know, just echoing from the comments that the chiefs made, is that, you know, we've been seeking a seat at the corporate table for such a long time, a meaningful seat and a meaningful voice, and we're starting to get them. You know, as Chief Darcy mentioned, you know, he is the chair of SAS Power for a number of years, and there's many more of our leaders. Keith Mortel was here earlier with Nutrien as a board member. And so we're starting to occupy those spaces to have our voices heard within industry and government. And when it came to hosting this event, it was a bit different. That when we attend conferences and speak many times, we're one of a handful of First Nations or Indigenous people at a mining conference or a nuclear conference. And our role is to advocate for all of our nations, whether it's just our nation or all of First Nations. And what a great opportunity is, as some of these speakers have said, it is the time to host an event on behalf of our 74 First Nations in Saskatchewan and we invite, we welcome, we host, and we provide that meaningful seat at our table for government and industry. Because that two-way relationship and that true partnership really is what is going to create success for the future, is having our voices heard at the table. So I thank you very much, Chiefs. Thank you very much for sharing some of your experience. And these younger Chiefs are starting to learn how to be long-winded Chiefs like Chief Marcel. So let's give them another big round of applause. Thank you very much for your time, and you've been great colleagues for many, many years. So we have some gifts Kyle will bring up as well. And everybody, thank you very much. I know we're getting close to the gala, but we appreciate everybody staying here because it's such interesting conversations packed into 2 days, and I know we don't want to miss out on anybody. But thank you very much, and we'll see you all at the gala at 6.